I was wondering if you guys could tell us a little bit about your background, and we'll start with David because he has probably the most interesting title as Digital Prophet at AOL. How did you get there, and how did you win that title of Digital Prophet?
Yeah, thanks, mate. Good morning, guys. Great room, by the way. Holy shit. I speak at a lot of places, and they don't normally look as good as this does, so amen to that. A couple of things. My background is a creative. It's really hard to believe when people meet me. Classically trained designer, when I say creative. So literally the last school of bloody, bromides and drafting tables, and some of us in the room seem old enough to be able to understand what I'm talking about, which is really important. So that's my background. I left that early when I discovered this thing called the internet. And really it was this fascinating just leap of faith. So what I did, David, is I just literally said, hey, forget these multimedia bullshit and forget this whole idea of print. I'm going to go and run to digital. And I invented some internet technologies back in the day and helped found a couple of patents for technologies and bullshitted my way into the internet. And what happened from there is that I ended up sort of fundamentally understanding about digital simply because I was part of it. I was a consumer of it, and which is where I am today. So I ended up being a head of media and marketing for AOL for about 18 months, 2 years in Europe. So I was responsible for all the publishing across 11 countries. And my part-time job was evangelism, and that's why I ended up being the full-time evangelist, I don't know, for about 2 years for AOL. And the title's made up. I think the industry is totally at a change. It's at a point where titles shouldn't be the same as what they used to be. Somebody wanted to call me the chief creative director or the ECD. I really couldn't give a shit about that. I just really thought, we're in an industry of change. I wanted to be a change maker, so I made up a title that didn't seem to exist.
And you took on some marketing in addition when you got to the States. Weren't you also interim chief marketing officer
here
absolutely.
As well for
a while?
Yeah, well, in Europe, I was the head of media, head of marketing, so I was already head of marketing on two sides of the fence. So when you work for a large organization like I do at AOL, we collapsed the two organizations and marketing together. So I was responsible for the consumer side of it and also the B2B side of it. And I was also the interim CMO here in New York for about 9 months last year when I needed to make sure we were steering in the right direction. So marketing's always been at the backbone of my career and at what I do and how I think. I just don't carry a marketing title nor a marketing degree.
Sure. Wow. And to follow David, it's best Twitter address ever. I think it's just Shingy. Shingy, yeah. Just Shingy with a Y at the end. And it's really entertaining to follow David. Thank you. And next, Jonathan. Jonathan has had chief digital officer roles at, I think, 3 different ad agencies. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's Martin. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your trajectory there?
Sure. First of all, I'm going to see if I can outswear David. So we'll see if I can.
Possible.
There's no need to be like that.
The hashtag. I actually started out at a digital agency. My background was degreed in marketing, and I went to law school. And usually I'm the wild-looking one on the panel, so I'm feeling very tame here today, next to my friend David. And I'm just going to keep picking on him the rest of the show. But I started out, it was called Spectracom, and you can't get more of a digital agency name than that. I moved on, I came down to Chicago. I was the first digital employee for a direct response agency called Thomson Agency, which no longer exists. Moved on to Draft FCB. Was part of the Walmart debacle. For those of you who remember that, I was in that pitch. If anybody wants to talk, you have to buy me a beer first, and then I will cry in it. But it actually ended up working out for me very well. So I went and I was the second chief digital officer title and role in the US, and that was for Arnold, where we did, the guys in the bog for Ocean Spray, and we did the islands of the Bahamas and things like that. Then I moved on to the Martin Agency. And we were just on a tear when I was there. It was 2009. We ended up getting Agency of the Year. We did so much great work. And most of what I did for them was new business. I think their biggest weakness was they were great at branding and they were great at Pigs and Geico commercials. But I think that their digital influence, I think what we were able to do, the most successful thing that we did there was to switch digital from a destination to an insight. So a lot of those, the pig and the caveman and the gecko and the blah, 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 a lot of that came from digital search insights, right? People were talking about ringtones. So we'd make a commercial about ringtones. The older gentleman with the gecko in the bathroom, if you saw any of that. A lot of those insights came from that. Then I went on, headed up the DDB office in Chicago. Then I came to Ogilvy. I bounce around a lot now that I'm saying it. I came to Ogilvy. I was head of North America for content. And that's where I met Jamal Mashburn, who owns, if you guys know him at all, he owns a number of businesses. I think he's got 200 in all, and he wanted to get into advertising. So one night, I lived on 42nd and 10th, one night playing basketball in my basement, and showing him a few moves here and there, bad moves. We decided to start the agency, and now what we're doing is we're actually owning our own products. We've got a TV show coming out with Jamal Mashburn, and we also pick up clients as it goes. So things are going really well.
That's great. I'm really happy. And how can we follow your agency, your new agency? What's a Twitter?
Oh, MashburnSackett.
MashburnSackett, great. And Chris Hooven, Senior VP over at OSF Global. Tell us a little bit about OSF Global and how you work with CIOs, CTOs, Chief Digital Officers. What's the connection for OSF Global with this
Sure.
group?
First of all, thanks everybody for being here, and I appreciate you having me on this panel, Dave. I think, so OSF Global provides, we provide professional services, implementation services of technologies, strategies, and support services beyond that for companies that are trying to execute their digital strategy. Where we really play a role mostly is in the e-commerce space. A lot of our customers right now are Fortune 500 retailers that are implementing e-commerce as part of their overall digital strategy. And so we are experts on specific platforms that they particularly want to implement, and we are able to connect the technologies around that to support the entire ecosystem for e-commerce. And so we work with CTOs, CIOs, and sometimes CDOs in helping them define that technology strategy that supports their overall digital strategy, and then, of course, the implementation of that and beyond.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating, watching from the outside must be interesting to see this growth so quickly of this new title and how it's intersecting with the CIO space.
Exactly.
So David, an interesting background for David Chivers. Again, the whole point of this panel is to show some diversity in infotech and advertising and in publishing, but David has a publishing background but is now at what I guess you would consider a consumer goods organization. So tell us a little bit about your career trajectory and how you ended up at Jostens.
Sure. So for those of you who don't know, Jostens publishes yearbooks, does class rings for high school and college, does caps and gowns, and basically celebrates some of life's most important moments in both sport and education. On the sports side, we've done 30 of the last Super Bowl rings. We've done a number of the NBA championship rings and a number of the World Series rings. So we're pretty pleased and excited about that. I joined Jostens nearly 2 years ago now. It was Chief Digital Officer was a new role for the company. They were doing a lot of really interesting things around digital, but had no cohesive strategy around how do they approach it, what's a platform approach, and how could they digitize the organization as much as possible from end to end. So that excited me. My background, as Dave said, was mostly in publishing and media. I worked for Meredith Corporation, who publishes Better Homes and Gardens, Ladies Home Journal, for a number of years, and then I ran WSJ.com for a couple of years, their subscription business, then their new product development, and then ran a business called Factiva, which is also owned by Dow Jones, which is a business information service. So what I saw in this space and what made me jump from the media business into this consumer goods business was a lot of the pieces that Jostens were struggling with from a disruption perspective, the media industry had experienced 10 years ago. So there were a number of things that I felt like I could jump into and look like a hero. At the same time, there were a number of opportunities to do some really different things around commerce transactions, and the fact that the majority of Jostens end customers are millennials and parents of millennials, and increasingly those parents are digital natives themselves. So they're expecting certain experiences that a 117-year-old company that's had a rep in every school selling class rings and yearbooks wasn't really prepared to take advantage of. So.
Yeah, and you brought up your perspective. Why do you think that Jostens hired somebody from the publishing space into the consumer packaged goods space or consumer goods space? What do you think their driver was? Were you recruited in, or did the board find you? How did the...
Yeah, I was recruited into the role. The board, what was very exciting and about this opportunity was the board was fully supportive of hiring a chief digital officer. It actually originated with the CEO and the board. I report directly to the CEO. And they were looking for, part of it was the yearbook side of the business, knowing that they had this content engine that they weren't fully taking advantage of. And I think also some smart thinking from the board in terms of creating a longer relationship with the customer, and instead of just getting into the school and having sales reps sort of hit you up for a ring or a yearbook or your cap and gown, how do we provide value and content on top of that for parents who are going through, in many cases, their first experience with their child around something as important as graduation.
Right, great. Let's talk about talent, guys. You know, some of you had acquired a team, some of you have inherited a team. David, I guess we'll start with you. You know, well, interesting with David, I guess you're in Minnesota, you're in Minneapolis,
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Minneapolis, so you've got tech talent up there, and maybe we'll move to David Shing after that.
Sure, yeah, we have, actually, I moved from New York to Minneapolis about 2 years ago, and that was one of my concerns, was that there would be not a lot of talent there. But for those of you who don't know Minneapolis, I'm not making a pitch for the city, although it is a great place to live. There's a number of Fortune 500 companies there. There's a broad swath of different industries there. And because of companies like Target and Best Buy and the agency work that Fortune 500 companies
3M and Honeywell.
Create. Yeah. Yep, 3M, Honeywell. There is a nice pocket of digital talent there. So I've really been pleasantly surprised in terms of building the team. My first sort of priority, this was a legacy company, 117 years old, like I said. We had some talent, really good talent, but we needed to augment them with talent around IA and user experience, digital product management, which was sort of a brand new concept, visual digital design, which is a brand new concept for bringing it in-house. Historically, Jostens had partnered with companies to do that, and I'm really happy with how our team shaped up. We're about 3 times the size we were when I joined, have been growing revenue aggressively over the course of the last 2 years, and the team in general, I think, is having a pretty good time.
And you report to the CEO?
I report to the CEO.
The CEO who hired you disappeared after 3 months. What was that all about? Then you inherited a new CEO. I guess interesting time. He hired you, right?
Yeah. Our former CEO left after 3 months in my tenure, which was
quite a challenge.
Was quite a challenge, and we took a year to find a new CEO. And during that time, I was fortunate to get a tremendous amount of exposure to our board,
right.
And
great.
Partner with my other senior leaders.
That's great. Actually, it turned out into a blessing as well. Right. You got to work with the other senior members of the team.
Yep.
And David, who do you report to at AOL?
I split my reporting into the sales team into the CEO.
The CEO.
So I report into Tim.
And then did you inherit, do you have a team that reports up to you? And if so, what do they do?
So where it's a little bit different, and I think this is kind of a new model, really, is everybody inside the organization, from my perspective, is a consultant. So what happens is we just put together swarms based around what the problems are. And I think what's interesting, when I say I think it's a new paradigm, because I think the digital part of this is all going to go away, so my title at some point in time will not be the digital part of it. Maybe I'll just be prophet, who the hell knows. But what I think is, and that's
Messiah.
Let's leapfrog. But what I think is fascinating is the multidisciplines. So people who have the multidisciplinary curiosity in this industry are the ones that go far, in my mind. It's not just somebody with a marketing background or a tech background that suddenly becomes a CDO. I think it's interesting. More importantly, those who are, as I said, technically curious. So, one of the initiatives I'm trying to forge at AOL is to make sure that everybody, not just the tech teams who already understand what ones and zeros look like, actually cut code. So understand the fundamentals of what digital, if you're in digital business, holy crap, you better understand the background behind that thing, because that gives you a baseline to understand the building blocks on top of it. The change is, it's much easier to do things today because you have this rapid development cycle that you can do things in. So talent-wise, it varies, man. We have people who knows how to go into a cage and mess around with the hubs and switches and have done that for donkey's years. But we also have a bunch of people who are just fresh out of school that are kind of like interns on steroids. Then all they want to do is cut code to problem solve. And that problem solving typically is marketing interest, not just user experience and design. So I think it's, yes, the talent is broad. The ones that I find most interesting are the ones who are curious and anybody who wants to understand what code looks like behind the curtain.
Sure. Well, that's a good point. And Jonathan, if you want to address that, but I have a question for you from the last panel, if we can.
Yeah, I mean, because I've been around the block with all these big agencies, and because frankly the big agencies have screwed so many things up, it's making my business very good.
Well, that's my question. You know, so the point from the last panel was 60% of CDOs in the ad sector, I mean, 2/3 of CDOs in the ad sector were previously CEO. And so my assumption there was exactly what you said. The incumbents are screwing things up. So it's almost like we're revisiting what happened in the early days of the web in 1999. The ad agencies aren't getting it, so people are starting up a new Razorfish or a new agency or a new, startup.com. For ad agencies and going out like you and hanging up their own shingle again. Are we revisiting what happened in 1999 in the ad sector?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you got to keep in mind, what ends up happening is you're a victim of circumstance as far as your client's skill sets, right? So how are they structured? How can you structure around them so that it makes sense? Because oftentimes you're only as good as that person sitting across the table from you. We don't have a shortage, thank God, we don't have a shortage of people coming to us that want to work with us and for us and be on the team. It's just that what ends up happening most of the time is that these, our clients may not have the tech skills, to David's point. You have to understand the basic foundations of the technology. And I remember back in the day when we were starting all this craziness, 10, 15 years ago, people were saying, well, it doesn't matter about the technology. It matters about the objective and the point. But it's contingent, it's hand in glove with the tech, right? So I came from a background where I don't have a tech background, my brother did. So I was learning that by default, not by design, right? So once I was learning the technology, I was like, oh, okay, this is how you can apply it. For some reason, we seem to have branched off. CMOs don't, in my opinion, most of the people I'm dealing with, the CMOs don't understand the first thing about the technology. So what you've got to do is you've got to hire the right people on our side so that they're tutoring, mentoring, and helping them. And for some reason in this industry, there's this combative animosity between marketing and technology. I don't know why that is. I'm sure I see a couple smiles out there, so some other people have lived through it. But without the technology, you can't meet your marketing objectives. And without the marketing objectives, there really isn't a need for the technology. So I don't know why we have to teach people that, but like I said, the good news is we've got enough people running from the big agencies to run to us that get that, and because I've worked at all the agencies, I pretty much know who's who and how to use them better.
Right. And as far as we're back to the team, Chris, how do you find this has changed as far as helping companies who don't have an internal team or having challenges getting a team together, outsourcing or doing some of the development for them, working with them to help them achieve their objectives?
Yeah, I think it's actually fascinating. The company I started with, OSF, 5 years ago was about 85 employees worldwide. We're now 450 and growing incredibly fast year over year, really because of the demand for this unique set of talent that companies that need this particular talent that don't have access to it. They want it. They want to actually they want to upskill themselves, but time to market is critical for them. So they need to bring in a company like OSF Global Services to have specific technologies, expertise, and get them to market very quickly. They might, in the end, backfill that with their own technology base. They might, or their technology employees, and upskill themselves. But in order to get time to market, this is where we fit a real big role.
Do you have any questions for others on the panel, like David? What would we, or Jostens, any, I think one of the things we talked about earlier is how you see, what do you think some of the most critical responsibilities for a chief digital officer? Or it was David from Jostens. I thought maybe you had a...
Oh, yeah. So a question you said?
Yeah, a question for...
Yeah, I was, my thought is, given you're probably the most closest to what this whole topic is about here, Chief Digital Officer. In fact, your title is that. What do you think is the most key objective for 2014 in your role, right?
Well, I think for me, it's probably different for folks in the audience, but for me, it's changed. So this year, it's really about, I'd say when I first came into the role, it was about being a evangelist for what digital could be for a legacy organization and how we could approach things differently. And I'd say part of that role is to continue to try and break down walls between various functions, because I am a personal believer that the chief digital officer role will go away. I don't, 3, 5, 10 years, I don't know what the time frame is. I think it varies from industry and by company. But, doing digital things, interacting with customers digitally is something that every company is going to have to come to grips with, and every functional area and every business unit is going to have to come to grips with. So for me, this year we're really focused on, the first thing we spent a lot of time on was mobilizing a number of our commerce experiences, and we want to continue to mobilize our digital experiences for customers. Just the experience, we have a big need around omni-channel because we do have a very successful, very large sales force that goes into schools. It's actually one of the key differentiators for us. We have a tremendous amount of trust in schools around the country and around the world. But how do we link up those experiences, those in-school experiences, with really killer digital experiences? That's kind of the question of the moment for us.
And the whole implementation of that requires an awful lot, at least from where we see it on the back end, to make sure the digital or the data supports that across all the different channels.
Yeah, no, that's right. We have a lot of legacy systems, and we have a lot of what I'll call data gaps that we're sorting through, and that's a key issue for us for this year. I don't think we're going to solve it all in 1 year. It's a multi-year kind of focus for us.
Sure.
I mean, can I just add to that? I mean, clearly CDO's got to go away at the end of the day, because as CMOs and CEOs are getting younger, they already have this within their ethos. So digital is just a thing, and no longer it's about digital marketing. That's a bullshit term. It's about marketing in the digital world, right? So given that's the case, I think the CDO role will move beyond evangelism and into wisdom and experience with young, amazing, and creative talent, and bringing those two together. And that just becomes back to the fundamentals of marketing, which happens to have a technology bent, to Jonathan's point. So. I think that's kind of, and it's not a one-year objective, this is multi-year, but, a lot of the marketing that I spend a lot of time with brands, a lot of the CMOs and the CEOs are still silver-haired. These guys don't get it. That's why most of the bloody media dollars go into television. 70-80% of the dollars still go to TV today. Kind of weird for me, because if I do a presentation, who's got a TV? 100 hands go up. Okay, who's got a DVR? 100 hands stay up. Who fast-forwards the ads? 100 hands stay up. I'm like, bloody hell. I mean, you should probably watch an ad, give you spend all your dollars on there. But when it comes to digital, I mean, television is also becoming digital. So I think this whole digital river thing is just gone. It's gone. And if it's going away, we still keep it as a term. That's just something that's going to change. That's why I think we're at an interesting place.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's a good segue into maybe doing some color commentary on some of the other, the topic of this panel isn't really what CDOs do in your agenda. It's a cross-industry look at digital leaders, not just CDOs, and their strategies. And I wonder, how has the strategy changed? You've been at AOL now, David, for 3?
Yeah, 3 years here in New York, and I was publishing and marketing for them in Europe for a couple of years.
Most people would think of AOL as not an incumbent, as a digitally savvy, started out digital.
100% digitally native, yeah.
And then how has your role changed while you've been there? And also I'd love to hear from everyone on examples, so you can be ready for it, sort of examples of companies that you think are doing well, that really get this stuff, and maybe some individuals as well at those companies.
I mean, the truth is my role's kind of weird, because I do everything from chatting to you lot here today, to inspiring brands, to speaking to agencies and doing all of that stuff. But the other side of it, inside the house, I do everything from ad innovation, architecture and schemas, which seems like a weird thing for a creative dude to be doing. But that's the technology bent that I also have, as well as everything else that has to happen. So I'm multidisciplined. I take on the role of a chief creative officer in a digital world. Architectural work, I mean, I'm doing bloody fit outs and what things. So it's really, really, really different dynamic. But it's the trust of an organization that understands that dynamic has to be different in a company that has like 6,000 people. So we're a different type of digital native organization than some of the other businesses around, perhaps. So it's a hard question for me to answer, other than it's a crap load of work, and it's 360-degree view of everything that we're doing across the digital landscape, inside the business and outside the business.
And so for Jonathan, a great question for you, because you, as an ad agency exec and CEO, you see a lot of examples of companies doing it well and companies not doing so well, and individuals at those companies that are driving these initiatives. Do you have any examples you can give us of companies you think are getting it?
Yeah, and I certainly don't want to pick on I don't want to pick on any companies that I used to work for, but Ogilvy. It was interesting. David, Shing and I, how long we've known each other? Maybe 10 years. I don't know. But So it was interesting to me. I was giving a speech. I was new at Ogilvy at the time out here in New York, and I was giving a speech, and I said one of my premier partners was AOL with all the great things they're doing and everything. And everybody just kind of looked at me like I was a dinosaur. Like, oh, AOL, that's that CD company, right? You guys give those internet access CDs. So what I did was I lined up 6 or 7 cabs in front of our corporate office. We went over, I called David, and we took a field trip to AOL so that we could go through there. They treated us to a very nice lunch. They took us through everything that they were doing, and it opened everybody's eyes. I think one of the, Shing and I are friends, but why is AOL one of the best kept secrets out there? I have no idea, and how come the digital team didn't know that? Mm-hmm. So that was a huge surprise to me. Now, having worked with McDonald's and Geico and Walmart doesn't get digital. They don't open themselves up. It's a silo of digital. So in other words, our website is digital, and that's it. They won't open it up so that you can find the best price. They won't sell. They won't white label themselves or anything like that because they're Walmart. But then you compare that to something like McDonald's. McDonald's gets digital. They get it as an insight. They get it as a destination. They get it as work in progress, and they get it as experiential things that we were doing for them. And Lexus is another one that I think really gets it. If you look at their digital footprint, their digital presence, their social marketing, they're taking advantage of the things that people are saying about them and finding ways to promote it. You know, it's funny to me, I think I'm the only one up here on the panel that thinks that digital as a title or a role isn't going to go away anytime soon. But the reason why I think that is 9 times out of 10, I'm sitting across from somebody that they just don't understand it. Mm-hmm. You know, you can just tell that they're playing earmuffs with my team when they're talking about these things. I think there's more bad than good out there, and I think that there's more bad because of legacy, not because of spite or belligerence or anything like that. I think that there's a control factor on the client side of the table most times, 9 times out of 10, and they're trying to hold on to their territory versus doing a synergy and what's best for the company.
Wow, that's a great point. It comes back to, I guess, synergy with the existing leadership team. And David, you had an interesting, landing at it, having lost the CEO. It was great, actually, in hindsight, that you did, because then you were able to work more closely with other C-level executives and the board. You established a great working relationship with the people that mattered there, and integrating into an existing legacy organization, I guess, is a real challenge.
Yeah, I don't think it's an easy thing, or there would be lots and lots of great work out there, and there'd be lots of companies that are killing it. And the truth is, there's lots of companies out there that are doing okay work and are doing okay right now. I think one of the key things, I just want to come back, I actually think Taco Bell is doing a pretty cool job on from a social perspective with some of their campaigns that they've done. There's a story, I can't remember the kid's name, but high school kid that was, he's a swimmer, he's basically like, I really want, think outside the bun on my on my swim trunks. When I swim, I eat Taco Bell every day, and like instantly they got back to him and are like, okay, we'll send us your address, we'll get you the swim trunks. And then they did a social campaign around this kid that's an unofficial spokesperson for Taco Bell. So I think that's an interesting example of
they have different ads in Minneapolis. I went to school there, so I can think that
they do. No. But I do, this question of, and I've had this too in many different scenarios where you have to really make sure that you're speaking the same nouns and verbs, across functional areas. And you've got to check that over and over and over again. I'll give you an example. We do graduation announcements and invitations, and we have a designer on our site. It's not terrific. We're working on it. We're trying to make it better. But you sit around an executive boardroom or a boardroom and say, we need a world-class announcement builder. And then you ask, like, marketing, what does that mean for you? And for marketers, it's about getting lots of traffic to that builder. You ask the technologist, what's that mean for you? It means having these really kick-ass creation tools. You ask finance what it means to them. It usually means less, that it costs less. But as you go through each of those, you tease out really what each functional area is talking about. And it's not that anyone's stupid in that scenario. It's that they're coming at it from a very different perspective. And unless you spend that time teasing out what it is, you're going to deliver something, and then you're going to have half of your folks look at it and go, that's okay.
Yeah, I think since we've got about 13 minutes left, in preparation for this presentation, I brought up a number of different sectors and companies and then individuals in those sectors. And I want to make sure that I'm not dominating. So if any of you have questions, just kind of point your head in the back and raise your hand to try to get a microphone. We've got about 13 minutes left. But I want to show you what I gave everyone to prepare. It's a little bit hard to look at. I apologize just for the framing on the board. But you can see that I wanted them to look at every different sector. So not every different sector. I pulled up a couple of sectors that you would scratch your head and say, why is there a CDO at Starbucks? Why is there a CDO at Red Bull or McDonald's or BB stores or Sephora or Microsoft? And so I gave some examples: advertising, apparel, banking. You can see these all up there, and a couple of people within them that I thought were interesting. I thought maybe we do a little bit of color commentary on how you guys feel about them and some of these others. Like if you look at the retail sector, that Sona, I think Faisal, I know, is at he's the EVP of digital at Staples, and I think I'm not sure Sonia, but we're going to get into a couple of these. For example, McDonald's. And this to me, I'm going to actually sit down if you don't mind. Maybe if my mic works out here. Does my mic work? Maybe I better not. Atif, so, what's going on at McDonald's, and maybe Jonathan could speak to it because he had worked with them, but Atif has that exact background that I was talking about before. The perfect next step for him was Chief Digital Officer, and his perfect next step is CEO and board slot. Why? He's got all the GM experience, P&L background. He was with digital natives. It's not like he's new. He is new to the food and beverage industry, but he's certainly a digital native. For example, you see a little bit of his background. We pulled in some of the more significant previous positions. He was a general manager at Amazon for the Kindle division. Before that, he was head of global product marketing and strategy at Yahoo. He was head of local business at Yahoo. Before that, I think he was one of the original AOL guys on the venture team for AOL Ventures. Mm-hmm. And of course, great background, University of Chicago for education. And I just wondered if you guys had any thoughts on, again, I think to the untrained eye, CDO at McDonald's seems a little bit weird, but he's new in the role, about 5 or 6 months into it. And I wondered if there are any thoughts. Maybe Jonathan, you could start on kind of thoughts on Atif's background.
Yeah. That's the first time I've seen his background. I like it even that much more. It's funny.
I guess why McDonald's too. They have a CMO there that seems to get it, right? So what was the dynamic?
No, I think it's I don't eat all their burgers, but I think it's a great organization as far as digital layout. But you got to remember, digital itself. I feel like we're using that word. I wish there was another word I could use in place of digital, but. Digital itself isn't, you have to keep it in mind. It doesn't, just because he serves that role doesn't mean that it's not everybody's job, okay? And one of the things that I found in working with McDonald's, the last initiative I did with them was the farming initiative. If you guys saw that, the real farmers, the real potato grower, the real lettuce guy, and what we could do with that online. I think one of the things that they do well and they do right is they have digital people hiring digital people. And I think even if you talk to their CFO, you've got people there that keep digital in mind at all times, okay? It's an operational efficiency, it's an operational function, but it's also a marketing and a technology function, and that's one of the reasons why I brought them up earlier. You're handcuffed by the person who's interviewing you, okay? And I've seen over the years in this, I've seen a lot of snake oil being sold. And frankly, a lot of people that are hiring these CDOs aren't qualified to hire these CDOs, and then you wonder why there's animosity from within, okay? It's a perfect storm. What they do well and they do right is everybody has to go through class and classifications. There's constant education, and there's constant internal seminars, and attendance isn't mandatory, but everybody still comes, okay? So that's the way to socialize digital in and of itself. But like I said, if you're not keeping in mind your operational efficiencies and you're only thinking in terms, well, that's the chief digital officer's job. It's everybody's job. Right. The internet, your cell phones, they're not going away. And I think these guys do a great job of capitalizing on it.
Yeah, and absolutely. And look at his background. From the bottom, you could see under that head of local business, big product marketing experience, right? So running product marketing, business development, monetization for local properties of Yahoo. Move it up a level to head of global product marketing strategy at Yahoo. Move it up to Amazon, Kindle. He led the P&L at Amazon. So a guy, clearly a digital native, really gets it, perfect for McDonald's, and I think a great background. We had a question from the audience, or a comment?
Yeah, hi. I'm Bob Norp. I'm host of the Beamcast Marketing Podcast. It's interesting to me. I've talked to a lot of people in the tech startup community, and over again, you hear from the tech startup world that the CDO role, calling a chief digital officer, is kind of code for we don't get digital, and that somehow you need to figure out digital, and so you bring in somebody to be an evangelist.
Or somebody to blame.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. I've been the blame guy a couple times.
The CTO role is where all the marbles are. So how do you manage that, and especially considering the fact that so much of the future of marketing comes down to, taking advantage of ad tech, taking advantage of startup technologies, working in the digital experience, making it a native part of the organization. And yet, the people who are doing that innovation are looking down their nose at companies that have CDOs.
Can
David? Yeah,
let me have a crack at that first. A couple of things, just as observation. Let's not confuse digital with marketing. I think that's a rubbish idea. We have to think about, especially in a lot of physical companies, they've got to move product. And digital could be part of that river in a retail experience. It makes perfect sense that McDonald's has one. And it makes perfect sense that this cat does not just do marketing, he does retailing. He does a lot of different things inside the sector because digital isn't bound to screens. It's bound to wearables. It's an environment. It's a totally different ecosystem that we're playing with. And the real challenge is, I actually don't think the CTO in the future will have the power. It's the CMO, because they understand that the landscape to have an audience is different, because your audiences have audiences. That's just the new. People are just trying to get their head around that, where before, awareness advertising, awesome, man. Run some 60s and 30s and hope to God nobody talks to you. And that's the world we're coming from. Where we're going is your audience has an audience. So we have to go back into a different type of dialogue. I think the companies that are doing amazingly well are the ones that actually bring all those disciplines together. I think about a Mondelez, I think about a Unilever, I think about somebody unobvious like a Disney. They bring in these multidisciplines to say, hey, digital isn't bound to screens, it's an experience. How do we take the experience out? And that's why somebody like a CDO is the person who shepherds all that together to say, oh, now we can actually experience this well beyond screens. And that's something that I find, when we talk like this in front of brands, they look at us like we landed from Mars. And that's where we are today.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add to that is that I don't know if you guys have ever heard this one. You can lead a horse to water, but you're an idiot. And that's not directed at anybody. But what happens is if people don't have it in their DNA and they don't have the desire and the hunger to learn it, there's really little you can do. And if your organization, if one CDO does not make you a digital organization by a long shot,
right.
Okay? What has to happen, like I said so many times, from insights to production to measurement to the database itself, that's digital. But it also has to come from operational efficiencies. And like I said, this kind of background is perfect for
Definitely. And I think, too, we'll go to Starbucks, but Steve, if you could prepare for me on the second screen, if you could go to cdoclub.com. Can you go to a live website? You go to, give that a shot on the second screen, cdoclub.com, and click on the the executive career search link. But while we're doing that, further to Jonathan's point, one of the best, or the people people I look up to as a chief digital officer is clearly Adam Brotman at Starbucks. Another example of food and beverage, and most people scratch their head and say, "What the heck? Why does Starbucks need a chief digital officer?" But the things that he has done there are just incredible. And when you look at his background, it comes from the startup world, right? So I don't want to go too far back, but '96, this is sort of the start of the web. He was CEO and co-founder of Play Network, and before that, he was at Corbis. I'm sorry that the link doesn't go all the way down, but senior VP at Corbis, member of the executive team, responsible for Snap Village and some others, and then went on to be CEO of Barefoot Yoga, and since 2009, has been Chief Digital Officer at Starbucks. And for those of you who go to the stores and have the mobile app on your phone, that because of Adam and the CIO and the CTO, you can order Starbucks from your phone, you can get all of those rewards and have your loyalty card built right into your device. So I think another great example of an industry that you wouldn't think would have one, but that does and is really excelling, and is now an example, I think, for a shining light for other organizations to kind of follow in their footsteps. Any color commentary on Adam's background or the things they're doing at Starbucks? David?
I'd like to. I think this is a great example of an organization that really took. So not only has he enabled sort of digital transactions, but when I was at the Journal, I had a chance to work with Adam, and he really has this vision of creating, much like their founder has, of creating this experience that goes around coffee, but infusing that experience with digital content and digital experiences. Everything from their partnerships with content providers to their decision a few years ago to make Wi-Fi hotspots free as opposed to charging for them, because they knew that was a big piece. But I mean, I also think the thing that he's done well, and I suspect what they're doing at McDonald's, and this gets back to Jonathan's point and even to some extent David's point, is they're surrounding themselves with people who, they're augmenting their existing teams with people who get these experiences and get insights, and they're surrounding themselves. And I think as you go through this, you'll see this. I think IDEO talks about these T-shaped people. You know, they go really deep in a certain place, but they can spread across really wide and have broad conversations across the organization. Those are the kinds of people, you know, at the CDO level that you're definitely seeing, but I'd argue that that's what, you know, our mandate as chief digital officers are to do with the teams that are coming in, because I do think there's a natural tension, just to come back to the earlier question around, if you come from a startup and you say, okay, all I know is digital or all I know is technology, and you're just basically, as a legacy organization, bringing a CDO saying you don't get it, there's a real divide there between sort of, if I've grown up in an organization that's never had to deal with any of these things, never faced digital disruption in any real way, and all of a sudden one day you wake up and say, oh, shit. I wanted to use shit at least once.
Oh, Shingy.
Damn it.
Darn it.
But I think that's a really good point, because if digital in isolation of everything else is not going to make a company.
Yeah.
Okay? And I love the way you phrase that, because if digital should not be a department, it should be a discipline.
Yeah. Good point. Wow.
Look, I think it's even simpler than that, which is brands want to be a culture. They want to create cultures, and Starbucks is a great example, McDonald's, every brand across the planet wants to create a village around their cultural brand. Digital is ubiquitous, dude, and so it's already part of it. And the audiences have audiences. It's a very, very different paradigm. And I would argue that it makes perfect sense that all of these brands have people that are playing in digital, because it's all just part of the ubiquity. It's all part of the 360-degree extension of the brand.
Yeah, but I said it like this.
What commercial was that?
Yeah, I think he also dispels this old myth that and not to take pot shots at the ad industry, but in the beginning, the critique was that these were high-paid navel gazers that really didn't do any work.
That's right.
Adam, is that correct? And Adam really dispels that myth. And maybe in the early days of the ad agency world, this was true, that you needed to have somebody to come in and have a strategy, but that wasn't necessarily execution-oriented. But I think we're way beyond that now, and we're really deep into execution mode, especially at the ad agencies and at some of these brands. I know we're running short on time, but I want to go through one more person, and then I want to take a look from the opposite perspective on what are companies looking for. And that's why I wanted, Steve, thank you for pulling that up on that other screen. Those are outdated. Just about all those jobs are filled. But if you go to cdoclub.com and you click on the career development link, I usually put up a couple of job openings for chief digital officers around the world. And I highlighted a couple of them up there. We'll go up to everybody's taking notes. If you're looking for jobs, that's the place to go, cdoclub.com. But let's look on the big screen again, just one more person, because we got, I think it was Starbucks. Let's take a quick look at Starbucks, because Werner Brell is another person who's just done an incredible job at Red Bull. Red Bull, they like to say it's a media company that also has a beverage, right? It's just an incredible publishing and marketing powerhouse. I subscribe to their magazine, and it's just an incredible publication. And Werner has been one of the people who's really been driving that strategy. He's an old media guy. He was at MTV in London, earlier on New York and London, moved on to Senior VP and General Manager of Daily Motion in Germany, and then moved on to Red Bull Media House. And interestingly enough, just the name alone says it all. It's not Red Bull the beverage, it's Red Bull Media House. And I like some of the things that Werner's done there. I don't know if you all want to comment on that or if you want to jump over to some of the jobs, but Again, food and beverage, something you might not necessarily suspect. So let's quickly, since we're running out of time, look at these open jobs, because I just bring up 4 of them. If the title of this panel, and the title of this panel is a cross-industry look at digital leaders and strategies, what are companies looking for when they put up a job description? It's very clear that it takes a long time. It takes just as long to hire, and Janice and Jay and others in the room know, it takes just as long to hire a C-level person as it does to hire a CEO. It takes 9 months to a year to get that job description right, to vet it through the board, to get buy-in from the rest of the organization, to get that job description written, and then to socialize it in the marketplace. That alone takes 3 to 4 months. And then another 6 months of interviewing. So here are some job descriptions from a couple of different companies. And if you look at the MIT Technology Review description, it's almost all about product management. So people and companies come to me all the time and say, what should we be looking for in a CDO? And I go back and say, well, it depends on what you're looking for. This is a clear example of that. It was just filled. A guy named Eric Peltier filled that job. But it was clear when you look at the job rec that they wanted somebody with product experience. Now go to the next job up there, and it's from the, I don't know if you can get it on the big screen, Steve, instead of just the side screen. But the next job is the Corning Museum up in New York. And that was more of a job where they were looking for more like really get the website together, all of their online assets, do more digital marketing, but it had nothing to do with product or developing product. That was somebody like Atif's background at McDonald's. The third one down is right here in New York City. New York University's Tisch School of the Arts is looking for a chief digital officer. And if you read that job description, man, it's just like reading a job description for a CIO. It's all about, you know, the website, the connectivity, you know, it's more really nuts and bolts of running an organization from a technical perspective, and not much about product development at all. And then the last one, and you could also tell kind of what companies are hiring for when you see who they report to. And I think the bottom one on there is the University of California, Santa Barbara. That position reports into, as I recall, the vice chair of communications. And the skills they're looking for have much more to do with PR, online communications, digital communications, you know, traditional outreach, and more of a brand advocate for the school than necessarily what I would call a traditional chief digital officer. So there you go. You know, if you're looking for a chief digital officer, it really does go all across the map, and it really does. The key definition, I think, would be what are you trying to accomplish, and where are you in your digital evolution? But does anybody want to jump in on any of those open jobs, or maybe put in an application form for any of those?
I'm good.
You're all good. I think most of those have been filled, actually, and I think UCSB would probably be my ideal location to be a chief digital officer,
Well, you know,
somewhere in
it's funny
Santa
because
Barbara.
some of those openings I wouldn't call a chief digital officer role, which is ironic to me.
Yeah, I mean, UCSB is clearly like a PR role. It's a PR and comms
exactly.
role. Yeah.
Right.
And I think it's reflected in the title. I can't read it, Shingy. I think that title might not actually be.
Chief Digital Strategist and Marketing Officer.
Yeah, that's a mouthful. Yeah, Chief
Yeah.
Digital Strategist and
The
Marketing
Corning
Officer.
one, though, would be pretty cool.
Corning would be cool. That's still
250-year-old
open.
business that now builds Gorilla Glass. That's pretty badass.
Yeah. There's at least 25 openings right now just in the United States for chief digital officers that I know of. I mean, it's, you know, so that's why I predict we will hit 1,000 by the end of this year. We're definitely going to double again because the recs are already out there, and it takes so long to get these things in process that you can kind of see what the pipeline looks like. So, at any rate, we've gone over. Any comments or any questions or questions for the panelists? Yes, Janice. Can we get a microphone for Janice? Thank you. We just want to make sure we get it. We're taping for the archives as well as for the live stream. We are live streaming right now. Last year I had someone in the front row who was right in front of all the panelists, and yet he had his computer up and he was watching the live stream. I don't know why. But
We look better
Genius.
on the screen. I think.
Just very interesting in terms of, you know, what is digital, and it really has to be socialized throughout the entire organization. It's just not with one person. I'm interested, though, to know, in terms of your boards, what's the level of expertise at the board level, and do they get it? Do they buy into it? And because we do some work in the financial services area, and there's not a lot of knowledge there. and there are not a lot of CDOs there either. So just curious in terms of your industries, what's the level of expertise?
I mean, for us, we have a bunch of rock stars. We're digitally native, so those people are definitely hot. Hurst, I mean, we got the likes of Jim Stengel, CMO of P&G. I mean, absolutely bloody amazing, to be fair. But it all it'll change. It'll vary drastically depending on the sector they're in, I think. So more digitally native, you expect them to have digitally native, I imagine.
Yeah, it's me and Jamal, and he's a pretty smart guy, so I feel pretty good about us. But the other thing that I'd add is you got to remember, we're not just an agency, we're actually launching products, and we've been actually studying Red Bull a lot because we're launching an energy drink called Uptime. So everybody write that down, Uptime. It's going to be the best energy drink out there. But for us, going in, so not only do we have our own products and services, we also have an agency and a television show. Going in and taking over some of these companies as MashburnSackett, it's been challenging because Uptime has been around since, I think, 1980. And has anybody here ever even heard of it? Yeah. And to be honest, the former board members of it, they really didn't understand what digital could do for them. Search insights, social marketing. They hadn't updated a Facebook page in 2 years. Just all the basics, skin in the game things that weren't being done. So you don't like anybody to have to lose their job, but this is the ecosystem. This is the job that we're all in. We're all in this. Whether you want to be or not. So you got to learn it. So the companies that we've taken over and put under the MashburnSackett umbrella, it's been very challenging for me because again, I'm a native. We speak the vernacular, but we also do the duty. And when you're talking to these people and you know that they just don't understand this, well, there's really very little you can do, and we've had to start over in some cases. So the product itself is revamped, repackaged, and it's coming out in June. So. Then I'd like to, hopefully I'll see you again after that, and then you can ask me again.
You want to jump in?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a timely question because we actually, I'm on the board with the CEO and the CEO of our company, but we are looking for outside people to come in now, and we're trying to decide who those people are. We, of course, want to be select people from the industries that we serve, but it's really important that we have this CDO influence or mindset and background to add to the board. So I guess same sort of thing. See me in another year, and I'll tell you how we're doing on that front.
And see Jonathan to another year. Congratulations, kudos on your new firm. You had a Wall Street Journal article written. You can't ask for anything more than that when you jump out.
Yeah, the lesson we're talking about career trajectories. Just find a former NBA guy who's a decent person and
just like that, huh?
And a success. That certainly didn't hurt, but yeah.
Right. Well, I want to thank you all for joining us. Please give a hand for our panelists. Fabulous job.